Okay, we're live across three channels: Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Welcome, everyone. And today I've got an amazing guest, and I can't wait to interview her. So if you are a parent who has got a child with autism and you're thinking, will they ever get better? What can I do? Is there any hope? And you're feeling completely desperate about the situation, then you're going to enjoy this interview today. And I've got Marcia Hinds here, and she's going to come and tell you about her journey as a parent of a man now who had autism, and the recovery process, how he went from not having many words to now being fully fledged, independent young man. So if you want to hear more about the story, I can't wait to get Marcia on line now. Hello, Marcia.
Hi, Beverly. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on Women in Action. And this is episode 32. So if you want to check it out, you just go to teletherapyinaction.com/32 and you can listen and read about the interview with Marcia there as well. But as I said, this is a live recording. So Marcia, tell me about yourself, about your journey, who you help, and why you do what you do.
Well, I have to say that recovering my son from autism is the hardest thing I've ever done. There is no magic bullet. There is no simple answer. This is a very difficult problem, and it takes so many things to help make our kids better. And as a result, since my son, I was told he'd never be okay, and there was nothing I could do, and he would end up in an institution. And so many of us are told that. And fortunately, it made me so angry that I thought, I can't accept this. And, my son now is an aerospace engineer. If you would have told me any of that was possible when he was that weird little kid who used to go around the house plugging in and out his portable radio in every outlet, I never would have believed you. And back then, most of what I did was so that someday, if I ever had to put him in a group home, which I was told I was going to have to do, I could tell myself I did everything possible to help him. And I really did not believe he could get better.
So when you first got diagnosed, how old was he, and how did you feel as a parent?
He was, 3.5 or 4. The psychiatrist who diagnosed him was so proud of herself that she got the diagnosis right. I felt like she didn't care about my kid at all. And she told us, my husband and I, that if we were very lucky, that he might be able to run some computer in the basement of some building where he didn't have to deal with people. And then she finished us off by telling us that most of these kids end up in group homes or jail. And, we knew, without even talking, we knew we'd never be going back to that doctor. My husband and I, on the way home, I actually had a big meltdown and was screaming at the psychiatrist who wasn't even in the car. Because you've got to have hope, and you have to have something to get up to autism every day. Autism is a really difficult thing to deal with.
So when you saw other parents, and I see and I hear parents say, my child's 3.5 or 5 or 7, he doesn't say many words, and compared to his other peers, I just feel so desperate. I just don't know what to do. What would you say to those sort of parents?
I would say to those parents that autism is medical and it's treatable. And one of our hardest challenges is finding the right doctor to help us. And if you do the right things, your kid can get to the point where they're able to learn what they can't learn now. When Ryan was little, no matter how hard I tried, he kept biting and squeezing his sister until she cried. And my husband and I were both trained in ABA because 15 years before Ryan was born, we were therapists with Dr. Ivar Lovas at UCLA. And no matter what I did, I couldn't teach Ryan not to bite or squeeze his sister. And once we started the medical piece, then he was able to learn that.
Okay, so you had he had an older sibling, your daughter.
Yes.
So you knew what was expected, sort of like normal development. So when Ryan came about, you had something to, someone to compare to and see.
Well, and it was a good thing that we had Megan first, because if I probably would have had Ryan first, I'm not sure I would have had another child. Megan, it was great to have her as what was the right thing and when things happened for children, things like potty training. Okay.
Yeah.
That's really difficult for our kids. And one day, we woke up, Ryan was 3.5, and I said, well, I guess it's time to potty train him, because he didn't show me that he was ready. He didn't have the same things that Megan did to show me it was time to train him. So, I just did with him the same things I did with Megan, and it worked. He was trained within 2 days.
Yeah, but I wanted to share, actually. I'm wondering if I can share my screen, because we've got this really wonderful video of where you started and the transformation. We've also got like the interview within that. Ryan as a young man now. How old is he now?
He is now 33. And it's interesting because when, I have a problem and I'm sad, Ryan is the one I call instead of Megan. Megan's kind of the behaviorist and no sympathy at all. But Ryan, he's the one that gives me the hugs. He always says, Mom, I wish I could come out there and just give you a big hug. So.
Yeah. So here we have the video. I'm just going to put it on big version here. And then we're going to talk about it afterwards.
The experts told me my son would have to be institutionalized, but they were wrong. What the general public and most doctors don't know is that autism is medical and treatable.
When doctors believe that medical issues associated with autism are just part of a developmental disorder, children are not treated for the same medical conditions as every other kid. Is that really okay?
I'm Ryan's mom, and I wrote the book, I Know You're In There, Winning Our War Against Autism. Autism recovery is never easy, but with proper medical intervention, what I wanted most for my son actually happened. Ryan is happy and has friends. I want that for your child too. It's about living on Autism Island. It's about how difficult it is to be in the A Club. It's mostly about hope.
The subtitle being Winning a War on Autism. It was a war. It was a battle that we were fighting for a lot of years.
Here is what Ryan had to say about his experience in the documentary Restoring Balance, Autism Recovery.
I think we need to understand what the root cause of autism is, not just the symptoms. As an engineer, when we're trying to fix a problem on an airplane, we need to understand what that root cause is, not just the symptoms, in order to come to a solution.
All profits from my book, I Know You're In There, go to spread the word that autism is treatable. You can preview Ryan's story on Amazon.
Stop recording podcasts on Zoom.
Okay, so that's amazing, actually, to see that transformation. But what's really amazing is that you call it a recovery, but you don't call it a cure.
No, it's a recovery because Ryan still has to take the medications that keep his immune system working properly. And there was one time we moved, and I didn't think the antiviral did much. We're with our kids every day, and sometimes we don't see the changes because we are with them every day. And we moved, and I didn't fulfill that antiviral medication. And within a few weeks, I saw behaviors I hadn't seen in years. So, I do know it is the meds. Ryan has to be on the proper medications to keep his immune system working. He is
So what
not
do you mean by
cured.
behaviours? What sort of behaviours would you've seen when he came off it temporarily?
I saw a lack of coordination. I saw aggressive behavior. I saw, some of the OCD kinds of behaviors that our kids do. And it's really scary when you have a kid that's doing really well and all of a sudden it's back, and that's one thing I kind of tell parents. It's not like it's a steady climb and always positive things that happen for our kids. It's kind of 10 steps forward, 3 steps back.
Yeah. So I mean, you started the treatment, the medication. Can you remind me what medication is called?
Well, he takes several things, and each child is different with what they need. Ryan has Epstein-Barr and HHV6 viruses in his system. So he takes antivirals, he takes antifungals, which treat candida. Almost all our kids have an overgrowth of yeast, and that's what causes the kind of weird, the behaviors where they're doing things with their hands and they're saying the same things over and over and over again. And he takes a vitamin, and I think he takes vitamin D, and he takes iron, and that's all he takes. He doesn't take 10 million supplements. He takes mostly prescription meds. And did I say leucovorin? I don't know if
I don't think you said that. So if I was playing devil's advocate with you as a speech therapist, and I'm not ABA trained, I've been a speech therapist for 30 years, and I've worked with nonverbal children who are nonverbal and on the autistic spectrum disorder. So if I cynically said to you, oh, he would have, if he got the right sort of therapy, he would have been sorted out anyway.
And, I wish that was true. I wish that therapy is all it takes, but it takes that combination of medical and therapy. And it doesn't have to be ABA therapy. It can be, floor time. It can be whatever flavor you like. Because once their body is working, that's when they can learn how to do the things they couldn't before. And, I bet that you use ABA in your teaching and don't realize it, because ABA is basically rewarding the behaviors you want to see more of and ignoring the behaviors, you want to eliminate as much as possible.
Yeah.
Our kids get a lot of negative things all day long. And so it's important to try and ignore those negative behaviors and reinforce the positive ones.
Yeah. So when you got to teenage years, and I've got a teenager at the moment, and that you do get those tantrums as a teenager.
Absolutely.
So were they certain things that were difficult for him to do in terms of like social interaction, making friends, maintaining friends?
That was really difficult for him. And it's interesting because when he was in middle school, we used to say that Ryan was the United Nations, because he had one friend that was of Russian background. He had one friend that was Bulgarian, and then he had another one that was Romanian. And all these kids were very smart the way he was, but they all kind of didn't understand, kind of how to be with it, and what kids, what's popular and all of that kind of thing. And by having these kids who also didn't get some of the social cues, it worked out great for him. The other thing that Ryan did in middle school was theater. And I think theater is really important for our kids, because Ryan would get up in front of it used to blow me away that he would get up on stage in front of 500 people and just steal the show. And, you know, I remember sitting in the audience and just crying because I was so proud of him.
Yeah. And you told me the story of when he started at kindergarten around the age of 6, and he was like on the 3rd percentile in terms of his communication skills. So like 97% of children of his age were doing better than him.
Absolutely.
And then how did that change?
Well, in kindergarten, he was the 3rd percentile. By 4th grade, he was in the 85th percentile for speech. And, you know, a lot of that was just, you know, at the time, we lived in Minnesota, which is a state here in the United States, and they were not doing ABA or anything there. So we had to do it all ourselves. And Ryan got therapy all day long in the most natural way. When we were going through the grocery store and he's sitting in the cart, we were learning words, and we were pointing out different things in the store, you know. So we were always working. When we go out to eat, we would look around at the people in the restaurant, and I'd say, okay, so who looks friendly? Who would you like to go up to and talk to? And who looks like they're not so friendly? And, you know, that's how he learned how to have good facial posture and smile, because Ryan always had a frown on his face, and that does not help you with social skills.
Yeah. So you helped him with a lot of his social skills. How did you go about that?
Boy, it was hard. What I would do is I would borrow kids from my friends that had typical kids. And there was one little girl that he loved. I'd always use girls because they talked more than boys. And he loved Emily. Emily, I mean, he was madly in love with Emily. Whatever Emily told him to do, he did. Okay. And I would go to Emily's house and I would pick her up and I would bring her to my house so that they could play. And I remember one particular day we were sledding, and it was snowing and we were sledding. And it seemed like such a normal interaction. And we had such a good time. And it was one of those times where I said, oh my God, maybe we're going to make it. Until it was time to take Emily home. And we brought Emily home to her house, and Ryan started screaming at the top of his lungs because he did not want her to leave. And he didn't know how to say it. So all he could do was scream. And he was screaming right in her ear. And after that, Emily's mom told me that she didn't want to come play with Ryan anymore. And at first I felt like, gee, maybe I should save his feelings and not tell him, okay? But I decided it's important for him to know the consequences of his behavior. And I told him that Emily wasn't coming back, you know, and by this time he was doing pretty good, and he started crying. And I started crying. So the two of us are crying because Emily's not coming back. But that was an important lesson for both of us, that I let him feel the pain of his actions, and that, you know, it's important for him to know that what he did caused a problem.
Yeah. So you learn by consequences, isn't it? Behavior, behavior, and the consequences of that.
And at first we would have one child come over, and as he got better, we would have 2 children come over, and we would do activities that I knew he was successful at. Okay, we do things like board games where the real rules were clear and he knew exactly what to do. Or else I would let them play video games, you know, because that was something our kids were always good at.
But I know I've got a child now that I work with who is high functioning autism, and one of the things he really struggles with is this concept of work experience, you know. So he's 15 going on 16, and in the UK you're expected in year 10 to do work experience. Maybe you might be taken to work with your dad or whatever, or maybe it's somewhere else, and you just observe what it's like. And
what does this kid love to do? What does he obsess about, or want to talk about over and over again?
Oh, he loves the Cars movie. I mean, he's 15. He loves the Cars movie, and he loves Lego. He builds very intricate models out of Lego.
Mm-hmm.
But
And
yeah, so he
that
didn't
would
do.
be-
He refused to do any work experience. He just said, "No, I'm not doing it."
Well, probably because he was not successful with other people. And what I always tell my families is use what they love and obsess about to teach them. So if he likes cars, I would take him to a car dealership and maybe have him do some work experience there. Now, I remember when we were buying a new car, my husband and my son would go around to the different car dealerships and take test drives. And there was, the salesman was sitting in the front and Ryan was sitting in the back, and the salesman was saying something about the car. And Ryan says, "No, that's not right." Because Ryan had memorized all the information about this car from the brochure. And he pointed out to this guy what was wrong. And it's kind of funny the way our kids are sometimes. They're brilliant. They really are. And if you don't think your child is brilliant, think again. Because Ryan couldn't speak, but at 2 years old, he could operate any piece of video equipment in my house. And he could open any lock, even the one that was broken on the back door that I couldn't open. So, they may not be able to speak, but how they're in there and how intelligent they are. And you just have to figure out how to get them out.
Yeah. So, lastly, I was just going to ask you about if you, what sort of advice would you give to a parent who came to you and was that, really, I mean, you told the story about a lady who contacted you who was almost suicidal.
I had this one wonderful woman from New York who would call me whenever she was up on the ledge and ready to jump. And she would call me and I would kind of grab my chair because I knew it wasn't going to be good when Stephanie called, and, I would relive it with her because I went through all those horrible times. And one day she calls me and she says, "Marcia, I have something to tell you." And I said, "Oh, okay, Stephanie, what do you have to tell me?" And I'm grabbing my chair and I'm thinking, this is going to be really bad, right? And she says, "My 5-year-old started speaking for the first time after we did the antifungal medicine. And he even told me that he loves me." And of course, both of us started crying because we were so thrilled, that her son was speaking. And she said to me, she goes to one of the biggest autism specialists in the United States. And she goes, "How come this doctor didn't know what you know?" And I said, "It's not that he's not a dedicated doctor." I said, "I just studied Ryan like he was a little lab rat. And I learned a few things. And that's why I wrote the book. Because I wanted to save parents time so that they wouldn't, necessarily have to go through all the things that I went through." And, I made a lot of mistakes along the way, and I put a lot of those in the book. But the one mistake I never made was to give up. You can't give up. You got to keep going.
You got to keep going.
Putting one foot in front of the other, no matter how hard it is.
So I wanted to ask you that, well, you obviously started very young with Marcia, with Ryan. But
yes.
You, so if I was a parent with a child who's in their, 20s or, late teens, would it be too late to start this sort of medication?
No, it's never too late. I want to tell you about a girl named Robin. Robin was 28 when her mother started the medical treatment. And the only reason her mother did was because she wanted to stop the screaming and the self-injurious behavior. And Robin now drives. She lives down the street from her mom. She works 30 hours a week in a grocery store as a checker. And she's living a pretty wonderful life. She's not as recovered as Ryan, okay? But she's having a great time. And she even has a boyfriend. That's what I'm still waiting for with Ryan.
Okay.
He had a girlfriend in college, but that was the last one. So it's time.
So I know you told me the story about social skills and what his boss said about him.
Yes.
Can you tell us that story?
Yes. When Ryan started working for the company, the aerospace company where he works, his boss came into his office and told him what great social skills he has. And he was mentoring some kids and things like that. And he had to immediately call me, and we both started laughing because I taught him every one of those social skills. And it's important to realize that the social skills are the last thing to come and the hardest thing to teach. And the way we started with the social skills, I had one child at a time, and I worked with Ryan and that child. And then as he got great with one kid and playing with that one kid, I would add another one. And that's how we did it. It was difficult.
Yeah. So
And, the teachers thought I was crazy, okay? All his teachers. His kindergarten teacher, oh my God, I think she really hated me. There was one time she said to me, she goes, because they had a morning kindergarten and an afternoon kindergarten, and they had 20 in each one. And she goes, I have 40 other parents that I have to talk to. You're not the only one, okay? And I remember thinking at the time, because I had been a teacher, that no matter how angry I got with a parent, I wouldn't have said that, because I thought it was awful. And what was interesting is, we had this communication book that went back and forth through kindergarten and every grade. And it just he had an aide all the way through 5th grade. And this book, the aide would write down the things he didn't know, so I could somehow plan how to teach it at home. So we finally got it so that he sat really good in a group, and he knew how to raise his hand and he knew how to take turns. But when they went to the library, which was the same thing, the same behavior as group behavior, and the librarian was reading a book, he didn't know how to do that. So then we had to play library at home, and I would use my daughter, Megan. Frank would be Ryan and do everything wrong, my husband. Ryan would be there, the dog would be there, and I would be the teacher. And we would do it like it was.
Yeah, like a role play. Yeah,
and
that's
a practice.
Yeah, those are the kind of things that I do with the teenagers that I work with, and role play is really essential. And sometimes I do it wrong, and they have to correct me. And so,
They love it when you do it wrong.
Yeah,
they do.
So I was going to share your website with everyone. So let me just get my screen up. Here it is. So can you all see that? And yeah, so if you go to, let me just put it up for everyone so they can all see it. There is autismandtreatment.com. You can see the little banner there, and your comment there, that phrase, alone there is little we can do about autism, together recovery is possible. Tell me why you wrote that.
Because I think we all feel alone on Autism Island, and we feel very frustrated, and we feel very sad. I mean, I used to have crying jags that you would not believe. And what's really strange is when we're not okay, our kids aren't okay. We're their window to the world, and they're sort of attached to our hip. And I think together, if you read my book, you've got the roadmap we used to help Ryan get better. And I never charge people for any help. And they can call me, they can Skype with me. I have emails that have doctors from different countries and from different states. I have all the doctors by location. And, now that we have telemed, you can be in England and use a doctor here. It's great. But I still have not met one doctor that does everything our children need. You still have to trust your gut and kind of lead them down the pathway. One of the doctors in the book, Dr. Harvey, was so difficult, and his ego was humongous. And whenever I needed to get something from him, what I would say is, "Oh, Dr. Harvey, how much you've helped us. And thank you." And I'd go on and on about how wonderful he was for about 5 minutes. And then I'd say what I needed. I think the diflucan stopped working. He's been on it for a year. Do you think we could switch to Nizoral? And if I went through that rigmarole, he would listen to me.
Yeah.
If I didn't, he would turn me down. So you have to praise the doctors as well. And my husband and I almost didn't make it. It's very difficult. And the tension on the family is enormous. And I always tell my mommies, you have to do with your husbands like you do with your kids. You try and ignore as much as you can the things you don't like and praise the things you do like. And when I'm giving a talk, I always say men are so much more amenable creatures than we are. And it doesn't, we're difficult, but men, it's very easy to figure out what they like. What do they like? They like good food. They like good sex. And what's that last one? And my husband yells from the back of the room, respect. And I say, "Oh yeah, I always forgot that one." And it's true. I mean, I just wanted him out of my way so I could fix the kid. And if I had been kinder and treated him more like I did when he was my boyfriend, he would have been there to help me all the way.
Yeah, that's really good wisdom that you're passing on here, because it is a very stressful situation.
Oh my goodness.
And it has an effect on you as a couple, as well as all the dynamics within the family, doesn't it, having a child with autism?
Yes. And in the book, one of my big fears is my daughter getting enough time? Because so much time was spent on Ryan. And, I even talk in there about what we did in order to make sure she got time alone with mommy.
Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on Women in Action. You definitely are a woman in action. Put it in action, and you continue putting it in action, even when you've just had a triple bypass. So I really appreciate you taking this time out to come and share your wisdom, your story. And
have people please email me if you need help, because I have one email that has just the medications and interventions that helped Ryan the most. Sometimes when you go to a doctor, they give you 20 million supplements to do, and nobody can live that way. Nobody can do that. And
so I left the description. In the description, there's the email, the website, and you can get in touch with Marcia that way. I will leave all the links inside teletherapyinaction.com/32, because it's episode 32. And thank you so much, Marcia, for coming on Women in Action.
Beverly, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So there you have it. What an amazing woman, and what an amazing story of her son. So if you want any support and you're dealing with autism, don't do it alone, as Marcia says. There is support out there. And if you head over to my website, bevjessup.com, I also support young people who are learning the social skills. So I'd love to help you out too. And I've also got a masterclass coming up on Friday. So if you want to check that out, it's about pricing, because as therapists, sometimes we don't value our services. We don't price them at the right price. So if you want to learn more about that, I've left the link in the description. Register for the free masterclass on Friday. So until next week, Bye for now.